the North by suspending some economic aid, and he fully supported U.S. efforts in the UN Security Council to impose mandatory sanctions on the DPRK. And in the months that followed, his government played a very helpful role in producing the February and then the October 2007 agreements, calling for freezing and disabling the North's capacity to produce plutonium. And despite some awkward moments, some of which were televised from Sydney during the APEC meeting, President Noh did not stray off the reservation during his October 2007 North-South summit with Kim Jong-il. So we ended on a pretty positive note with President Noh, but it was difficult all the way along. Now, with President Lee Myung-bak's inauguration in February of this year, we now have a leader who's more in tune with the United States on North Korea, having no illusions about the brutal nature of the Pyongyang regime. President Lee is a true believer in reciprocity, linking economic aid to concrete steps toward denuclearization, and he is more willing to discuss human rights issues. While the North, as you know, has tried to bully President Lee into going back to business as usual, public opinion in the South has remained quite calm, reflecting widespread disillusionment with the meager return on their investment under the Sunshine Policy. So even with the expulsions of personnel from Kaesong, the tighter border controls, and other recent steps by the North to punish the South, it's my sense that President Lee remains determined to wait for Pyongyang to adjust to the new reality while reaffirming his readiness for dialogue, humanitarian aid, and mutually beneficial cooperation. Now, some people worry that Korea's move to the right under President Lee and America's move to the left under President-elect Obama creates the risk of renewed frictions over North Korea. But I think that Lee's realistic approach is compatible with what I've been hearing from the new administration, and I think it offers Washington an opportunity to synchronize policy with Seoul to a degree that was perhaps unimaginable during the Kim Dae-jung or Roh Moo-hyun administrations. I think the new administration from the outset needs to be blunt with the North Koreans that their wedge-driving tactics will not succeed, that it's time to end the propaganda barrage against President Lee and resume the North-South dialogue. We should then work with Seoul on a coordinated strategy that really confronts Kim Jong-il with a clear choice between nuclear weapons and a normal relationship with the civilized world. We have to make clear he cannot have both. Now, hopefully, on Monday, the six-party meeting in Beijing will produce a verification protocol and close out phase 2 of the process, and the Bush administration will hand over an intact, living and breathing six-party process to the next administration. And the new administration will have to decide what to do next. I think Seoul would rally behind what you might call a more for more approach that moved beyond the incremental approach of the last 2-3 years. For example, offering major political and economic incentives if the North were prepared to proceed rapidly, say over 500 days, to full verifiable denuclearization. And by full denuclearization, I mean handing over the weapons, plutonium, and any materials that they've imported related to uranium enrichment. If even then Pyongyang still refused to make the strategic decision to give up its nukes, we would certainly find a willing partner, Lee Myung-bak, in lowering the boom on Pyongyang. As is the case today, bringing China and Russia along will be more difficult, but they too may be getting a little tired of Pyongyang's salami tactics. Now, needless to say, the bigger challenge that we may have to deal with on North Korea is handling a succession crisis in Pyongyang with all the attendant risks of loose WMD, instability, and refugee flows. Now, as someone who's dealt with the upheavals in Europe after the fall of the Berlin Wall, I personally believe that change inside the North may, in the end, present more opportunities than risks. A successor regime may be less wrapped up in the mythology of the Kim family and more open to economic and political reforms that could lift the country out of its stagnation and isolation. No one can predict what will happen, except that Kim Jong-il will die sooner or later. And for now, it's imperative that the U.S. and South Korea prepare themselves for all contingencies. And I would say that the Lee administration seems a lot less touchy about discussing these issues than its predecessor. We should also quietly share our thinking with China and Russia, even if they aren't eager to share theirs with us, so that there are no misperceptions or miscalculations when events begin to move quickly in the north. Now let me leave North Korea and shift to what was the second big challenge during my time as ambassador, the transformation of the U.S. ROK alliance. President Roh Moo-hyun was elected in 2002 on a wave of anti-American sentiment prompted by the tragic road accident in which a U.S. military vehicle had killed 2 Korean high school girls. And many pundits at that time were forecasting the end of the ROK-U.S. defense alliance. But President Roh understood that he needed to maintain the alliance, if only as an insurance policy vis-a-vis China and Japan. So by the time of my arrival in 2005, President Roh had dispatched over 3,000 troops to northern Iraq, making Korea the 3rd largest contributor to the Iraq coalition. And our 2 governments had agreed on a roadmap for transforming and updating the alliance in ways that would lower the profile of U.S. forces in Korea, share responsibility more equally, and introduce greater flexibility for the post-9/11 era. I think people here know the specifics of the realignment and consolidation of U.S. forces, including getting our headquarters out of Seoul, an understanding on strategic flexibility for the use of U.S. forces beyond the Korean Peninsula, on the understanding that we won't draw Korea into a war with China over Taiwan, and Korea taking the lead from many military tasks previously handled by the U.S., culminating in the transfer of wartime operational control over Korean troops transferred to the ROK. Now, implementation of these agreements was very difficult. It often foundered because of domestic politics, leading to protracted struggles over military cost sharing, the environmental cleanup of closed U.S. bases, and over the timing of the transition of wartime operational control. But we did get lucky in President Roh's last year when he appointed General Kim Jong-soo, the former ROK Army Chief of Staff, as Minister of Defense. Thanks to Kim's leadership and his strong commitment to the alliance, we were able to get past these political issues and clear the decks of most irritants in President Roh's final months. I think the change at the Pentagon from Rumsfeld to Gates helped a little bit too. Now, when it came to the defense alliance, I think it's fair to say that President Roh often did the right thing for the wrong reasons. For example, sending troops to Iraq in the hopes of eliciting more U.S. flexibility on North Korea, falsely characterizing the OPCON transfer as a recovery of Korean sovereignty, which it really was not. Korea has sovereignty now through the CFC. I think more generally, politicization of alliance policy is what really prompted the fears among South Korean conservatives that transformation of the alliance and OPCON transfer were really code words for U.S. Withdrawal or even abandonment of Korea. So we tried to allay these concerns to some degree by agreeing this past April at the first Bush-Lee summit to suspend further drawdowns in U.S. forces on the peninsula, holding at around 28,000 rather than reducing to 25,000. Plus USFK's plan, which has been approved by Secretary Gates, to normalize tours of duty for American soldiers in Korea, which means moving from 1-year unaccompanied tours to 3-year tours with families, as the case in most other parts of the world. That was also a further signal to Koreans that we're in Korea to stay, or at least as long as we're welcome there. So I urge the new administration to stick with both of these decisions, even if the composition of U.S. forces on the peninsula may need to evolve from year to year to meet contingencies in Afghanistan or in other theaters of operations. Now, just as important as the physical transformation of the alliance will be broadening the alliance's mission into the 21st century strategic alliance that Presidents Lee and Bush spoke about at Camp David. Now, this is definitely a work that's still in progress.